Actually, I'm not going to check that way. Let's check this way. Let's do what we said in English. For key in sorted list. Oops, sorted list of keys. So we're going to loop through all of the keys. It's like we're going through all of these. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say word, right? That's what we said up here, is equal to dictionary at the key. And all I want to do is print out the word, right? Just a real sanity check here. What I expect to happen is we're going to get all of the content we want. Maybe it won't be split up in that way, but it should at least be in order, right? It should at least be in order of those keys by integer. And let's see if we get that. Oops. Escape colon W. Let's see. So we run it again. And let's see. We get we're good. We use strong encryption. You're just talking about theoretical concerns. The STLS is enabled by default. So I think we're getting really close, right? We're getting everything here. We're good. We use strong encryption. We're good. We use strong encryption. Then it looks like we're getting 2 new line characters, right? 2 new lines. And then we're getting the next thing. So we're like really close here, right? Do we see that we're like pretty close here? It's like we got to like do something with each of these words now instead of just printing one each out, right? We're like grabbing each of these words in order and then telling it to print it out. Well, we got to do something before we print it out.
Add them to an empty string.
Beautiful. Thank you. I love what you just said. Add them to an empty string and print that out. So that way it's like we put everything together, kind of like we're making one of those like a bead necklace or bracelet or something. We're putting each one of those words in there and then we'll print it out. I love that idea. Let's do that. So let's say maybe sentence is equal to an empty string. Oh, let's do it here. For key answer. Yeah, let's do that. Sentence equals to an empty string. Do I want to do it as an empty string or do I want to do it as a list? I will do it as an empty string. And then we'll say, what do we want to do with it? Add it to there. So we'll sentence plus equals the word. Now I'm going to have to change the order here. Let's put it up here before we loop through. Sentence equals that. Okay. And then we're going to loop through each one and add the word to the sentence. And then we're going to print, once we're done with this whole loop, we'll print the sentence. Print sentence. Okay. Do you see why I needed to remove, like you see how I moved this line 20 out from inside this key, this block and up to here? The reason I did that is because if we go through this loop, you'd notice I'd be telling the computer, hey, reset sentence to empty line every single time. And that doesn't make sense. I want to like build it. I don't want to reset it every single time. Okay, I think that this kind of makes sense. Let's see how much closer we get. Ooh, this is a lot closer, but not quite there yet. A lot closer, but not quite there yet. What we're losing out on now is we don't have any of the spaces, right? We just kind of like took the word and said, hey, plug the next word right into it. And I think that's all we need, right? We just need the spaces. Looks like that's it.
If we strip the lines before, like without doing this, would that create the same exact sentence as this?
I don't think so. I think if you strip the lines, you're going to be losing those new line characters.
Well, some of the variables or what's the keys are line breaks. So I think that would stay in if you strip them, no?
Let's find out. So where do you want me to strip them?
This is where I got stuck, so I have no idea.
Okay, so
I
what
would
if we
think-
try a different data structure instead of a string?
But I was thinking maybe we can just add extra spaces in the sentence.
I think we could do that as well. I think we can do. There are multiple ways. I'm like, my brain's like, that meme with all the calculations. I see so many different ways now, and we just got to pick one. I like. Let's stick with what we're doing right now and say, okay, we're going to use the sentence as a string, and what we'll do is we'll get the word and we'll add the word to the sentence, and then before we're done, we'll add a space. How about that? Right? Does that kind of make sense? We'll say sentence plus equals an empty string, like a string with a space in it. So let's try it this way. Closer, maybe. Almost. Is this what we want? Trying to think of how this is. Oh, I didn't want to stop sharing. Give me 1 second. There we go. There we go. Okay. Is this what we want? Let's make this a little bit bigger. We're good. We just use strong encryption. We have one problem here. Does anyone see the problem? It's very subtle.
There's a space.
Now you end up with this situation where you have that extra space at the end of the sentence that gets added from the new line. So we can do something to take care of that. Trying to think of what way makes sense. Maybe at the, I'm trying to think of how we want to do this. The easiest way in my brain to do it would be to not use a string here and to use a list and then add all the words up and then join the list with a space in between it each time. I definitely think we can go about finishing it this way using a string, but I think it will be a little more annoying to solve some of these like edge issues.
The list won't solve that problem.
No?
No, because it's going to join everything with a list, with a space, but you're still going to have a space after the new lines.
Oh, you're right. You're right. That's annoying. All right. So what do we do to solve this then?
Is there a way that we could put code in to say that after a line break, you do not include a space?
I see what you're saying. So you're saying if the word is that line break, do something new. And I think that's a good idea. Let's do that. Okay. So if the word is / new line. Let me actually do double quotes. I always feel safer with this. Okay. So if the word is that, what do we want to do?
Then you just put two quotes with no space.
Well, if the word is a new line, that's saying that we're done with the sentence. Right? If the word is new line, that says go to the new line. So if we can print the sentence, if the word is new line. Otherwise, what else do we want to do if we print the sentence? We want to make it a sentence again. Okay. And then, why is that not working? Control? Okay, that looks good. All right, so I'm just following what Shlomo told me. He said, if it's a new line, print the sentence, and then we can start a new sentence that we'll start building. Otherwise, if it's not a new line, just do what we've been doing. add a word to it, and then add the space. So let's try that. I'm going to get rid of this print. Cool. This looks, I think, like we're there. I'm just trying to see if there's something different because I see some of them have periods at the end. Oh, I think that that's right. So let's walk through this code line by line and just make sure we kind of understand where we're going and kind of comment everything. So make sure that we understand what we did. Top of the file every time, right? We're saying, hey, use the Python 3 interpreter to read this file. Import sys, super common. You're going to see this in almost every script you're going to write because we like to take in things from the command line so that we can, have options and do different things. We have our first time trying out a brand new library for us, the AST library. And this one is specifically to solve a problem that we had, a problem of parsing a string and interpreting it as a dictionary, right? So that's what this AST library is solving for us. Here, really common, right? Just grab the first argument from the command line. Sys argv, grab the first one. And then we save that as the file path. We use our with open to actually open the file. We're saying to read the file, and we're calling this file variable f. We read the contents and save that as this contents variable. And then we send that contents to this ast literal eval. What this does is evaluate the contents, which was a string, and gives us a dictionary, right? Once we had that dictionary, which was essentially just this, right? All that work just to get this into Python so that we can use it, we had to sort the keys, right? All of these keys were first strings, you see here, right? The string of 3, the string of 2, the string of 5. But we wanted to sort them as if they were integers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in order to do that, we kind of Googled around and we found this sorted function. Works with lists, works with dictionaries. And so you just say sorted dictionary. We wanted to sort by the keys as integers. So we typed in keys equals integers. That gave us back a list of all of the keys, right? We saw that list. It's from 1 to, I don't know, however far this went, 36 or something. Okay. We looped through all those keys and we went into the dictionary and we said, hey, dictionary, what do you got at key number 1 and key number 2 and key number 3 and key number 4? And each one of those keys was a word, right? Each one of those keys was a string word. Sometimes that word was represented, it was a new line and it was represented by /n, \n. Right? So once we had each of the words and we had them all in order now, because all of the keys were in order, we needed to string them together. And you told me we can string them together into a string, which makes sense. We could always still use a list. And, we saw that we needed to write just finally a little bit of logic to make it so that when there is a new line character, we needed to do something different. When there's a new line, that's saying print the sentence, right? When we got to the end of the line, just print that. So it's like we were stringing up we're stringing up good, we're stringing up this, right? Adding a space in between each one. And then once we got to the new line character, we're like, hey, we're done with that. Print it out, start a new string, and do it for the next line. And we just keep repeating that over and over and over. Did anyone solve this slightly differently? Any differently? Had different approaches?
I made the dictionary into like list type tuple, and then pretty much the 0 index would be the number, and then the 1 index would be the word. And I kind of had the same issue with the trailing spaces with the spaces at the beginning.
All right.
So just using what you just did right now and incorporating the item 1, pretty much like the first position.
Yeah.
I kind of got the same thing and put that into a string.
Yeah, I think if you're able to get to pretty close to this point, you're in a good position. Remember, the whole point of this problem, there's a few things that I want you to learn as you're doing these problems. Is one, some basic boilerplate, right? Being comfortable now at this point, setting up your shebang so we can say this is going to be interpreted by Python, understanding sys and sysargv, and understanding how to open a file and then loop through each of the lines, just like we always do. This problem was a little bit spicier because we were like, hey, now try importing a brand new library that you never saw before to do something for you. As well as a little more challenging kind of logic with this dictionary thing that we're like stringing things together and having to like worry about, oh, this is a new line. How are we going to handle this? How are we going to handle the spacing? And you'll know like these are real problems that, you know, real engineers have to solve. So I'm glad that, you know, you're encountering them now and kind of at least having fun or at least struggling through them. Okay, so it's 12:04 now. I want us to take the rest of this time to be working on both the naughty or nice problem and the IP counter problems. I think the naughty or nice problem is actually a little bit easier than Cyber Haiku Dictionary. Has anyone gotten started on naughty or nice? No? Okay. I think this problem is a little bit easier. Would it be helpful if we get started on it a little bit together? Yes. Okay. So let's get started on the approach. I'm going to try my best not to actually write any code, but we're going to do the approach together, and that way we can then have you guys translate that into code. I think that's good. Okay. So let's get started to it, right? Naughty or nice, right? Santa's asked you to help him parse a list, naughty or nice, of people coming to upcoming Christmas delivery. Seems as though the elves were writing down the names of those naughty or nice, didn't keep the same format. Can you give Santa a total count of how many nice and how many naughty people are on the list? Okay, so we got this sample file, and let's just take a look at it first so we have an idea of what our data actually looks like. So we have each line. Each line seems to have a person's name, some star, right? Or really just any person. And then at the end of the line, it looks like it'll say if they were good or bad. If you'll notice, and in the problem, it also said they didn't keep the same format. So in my brain, I'm thinking, well, I got to find some kind of pattern for each line so I could tell Python, hey, when you're looking at this line, I need you to be able to tell if it's if this is a counter for good or a counter for bad, right? I'm thinking I have to go through this whole file, count up how many are good, and count up how many are bad. And that's what it looks like it wants us to do. It wants us to write a program that when you give it a path to a file that looks something like this, it'll be able to print out how many people were naughty and how many people were nice. Right? And we should be thinking like similar, like we've had a pattern like this before, right? We're just counting things. So I'm thinking we're probably going to use some kind of dictionary. We're going to be opening a file. We're going to be looping for that file. And inside that loop, I'm thinking, parse it to somehow tell if it was a good or bad, add that to the counter if it was good, add that to the counter if it was bad, and then print out, the dictionary in such a way that it has, F string naughty list has the good people or the bad people, and nice list has whatever, the good people, something like that. So let's write some pseudocode. Save that. And I'll give you this code probably by the end of the day. I'll put it onto the GitHub repo so you have the solutions. Okay, let's first make our sample file. So I'm going to copy all of this. Copy by sample file, and I'm just going to paste. Cool. This looks good, right? Simple file like that. Save and quit. Cat the sample file because, I am, don't trust anything. And there it is, right? Looks just exactly the same as this one. So let's write some pseudocode now. Vi or vim, whatever. Naughty or nice .py. Naughty or nice pi is what I'll call it. And I'm just going to put in the boilerplate in first for us that I expect us to just know now. User bin env python 3 and import sys. And I'll say file path equals sys.argv1. And I will open the file with open file path r as f. And I will say contents equals f.read and print contents. And this is where I'll leave us. Or at least ask you guys to help me out with our approach now. Make it executable.
Contents.
What's up?
You missed an S in content.
Content, thank you. That looks good. Naughty or nice. Give it the sample file that I called it. Okay. Looks like at this point, all we're doing is just getting all of the contents. We can have the type of contents if you want to make sure that, so that we know what, we can make sure print. Let me do this at the end. And that way you can see it. It's a string, big old string. So do I want it to be a big string? We can do it another way too. Do it as read lines. And then we can see it like that. That'll give it to us as a list if we want it as a list. It's up to you guys though, right? I feel like I'm talking too much now. Let's get an approach. We've opened up that file. What do I do now?
For starters, I think there's a lot of noise. You only need to count the amount. You don't need to supply the names that are applied to good and bad, right?
That is true. That is
So
true.
Just, have a total for good and bad and then count by line. And if it says good in the line, add 1.
Okay. So you're saying we're going to keep a dictionary that holds keys of good and keys of bad. The values will be integers. We're going to loop through these strings and say if it has good in it, add 1 to the counter with good, and if it has bad in it, add 1 to the counter of bad. Is that right, Teddy?
Do you need to even make a dictionary? Isn't that making it
So
maybe unnecessarily complicated?
Are you asking me if we can just use 2 variables, one called good, one called bad? They both point to integers.
Yeah, would that work?
Totally cool. Totally can do that. Absolutely 100%. I will use a dictionary just because it's dictionary day, or it was in this problem. But if you feel more comfortable and you'd like to just set variables equal to integers, I think that's 100% a valid solution that will work and will get you exactly what you need. I have no problem with either one. I'm just going to prefer to use dictionaries just because, I don't know, I like counting, I like dictionaries, but I also see the point. There's only 2 things, right? Why do I need a whole dictionary? Whatever, you know? It's variety is the spice of life, and you can choose however you like to do it as long as the code works. Okay, you do bring up a good point though with your approach. You are telling me if it has good in the line, you add 1 to good, and if it has bad on the line, you add 1 to bad. And I am going to quickly search through here and find, use my, let's see, make this big. Tell me why that won't exactly work. There's an example of it on this screen.
There's a dash instead of a colon, so it's not.
So yeah, we definitely can't use just tell by the dash or the colon, right? Like at first, the first time I saw this problem, I was like, okay, let's see. If it's a colon, it must be good. But that's not the case because there's a colon with a bad here.
Mr. Bad Dude.
And then you have Mr. Bad Dude, and he's good, right? We have some issues here. We have to find a good approach to solving this here. We can't just say, you know, if bad in this line, add to bad, right? Because, what about Mr. Bad Dude? He's a good guy and, he needs his presence. So how else can we do it?
Is there a way we could replace all of the dashes
Well,
and then put it into a dictionary? And then if the values are good, then you add one, and if only the values are bad, as opposed to their names.
you slightly overthinking it. I can tell which line is good and which line is bad by looking at only one spot on each line.
Yeah, is there a way that we could just like take the last word of every line and use?
Right? I could take the last value or the last, if I split this up, if I split this string on the spaces, I can grab the last value here, and that tells me if it's good or bad, right? Like for every one of these lines, I'm just looking at this. Like, oh, good +1, good +1, good +1, bad +1, bad +1, right? This is what I want to tell the computer to do in English. I want to tell the computer, open this file, read these lines. On this line, split it up by the spaces so that you get this and this. Look at the last thing. If it says good, increment your good counter. If it says bad, increment your bad counter. And then once you're done with all that, print naughty list has X, people. Nice list has Y people. So let's write that in English again. You know what? I'm gonna get rid of all this. We'll rewrite it again together when you solve it. So let's write that. We'll say set some counter data structure, either just 2 ints or a dictionary with good and bad keys. Right? You see what I mean by this? Like you can either say good equals 0 and start like that, and bad equals 0 and start like that, or you can make a dictionary at good equals 0 and dictionary at bad equals 0 and start like that, right? Either way, I'm just holding some information here, right? So I can keep that count in my brain or, well, in memory. Cool. Let me delete these. Why is that not deleting? DD. There we go. What's next? So we want to set some data structure, either to enter or count it. We want to open the file, right? Open file. Look at each line. Split line up and look at the last word. If the word is good, plus equals 1 to the good counter. Otherwise, or we'll even use the word else, plus equals 1 to the bad counter. Right? And then I'll say, what else do we want to do? Print, the good and bad counter with appropriate formatting. Does anyone have any questions on this approach? Do you feel as though you can take these few lines of English and somewhat translate how to write them into Python? See, like, maybe. Tell me which lines are you most sure of. Tell me which lines you are most unsure of. And we can make it more explicit. I can't see chat if you're putting it in chat.
No, there's nothing in the chat.
Nothing in chat?
Maybe how to like split the line up.
I like it. How to split the line. All
And
right,
I
so
just look at the last word.
how to split up and look at last word. Okay, so let's say, let's look up each of these lines, right? It looks like a string, right? Do we want to do it as read lines? There's a string. So how can I split up a string? Let's Google how to split a string in Python. Who was going to tell me, Google or a student first?
Split.
Split method, right? So you could use this split method. Here, for example, what if this was our string, right? Welcome to the jungle. If you want to split it, let's see, try it for yourself. If you run it, it splits up the sentence by default on the spaces, which is what we want, right? Split it up into welcome to the jungle. How would I grab this jungle from this list? Or yeah, from this list. I wanted to print
bracket -1.
Run. There we go. That's how I can get it and then compare. You might need to be a little careful depending on how you read the file, right? You have that new line at the end. You might have to account for that. But, you know, I think we can figure out how to account for that. Any other questions, right? Using a data structure to save the information, opening the file, read each line, split that line up and look at the last word. If the word is good, if the word is bad, print it out with formatting. I'm going to save and send this to you guys. I'm going to split us up, and I'll bring us back together at, I don't know, in about 30 minutes. And see where we're at. Cool. Any questions before we go? Are you feeling a little bit more confident about this problem than the last one? I see some. Okay. All right. Here we go then. So I'm just going to read my comments that we wrote together and do my best to just write that into code. So we set some counter data structure to either just be two ints or a dictionary with good and bad keys. I'm going to use a dictionary with good and bad keys. Okay, so let's do that. Let's say counter. Well, let's say, we'll say counter equals, and it'll be a dictionary, right? And I'm going to say there's a key called good. And that will have a value of 0. And a key called bad, and that will also have a value of 0. Okay, does that look good? I think that looks good. Okay. Any questions so far? No, we're happy with this. That's good. I'm happy with this too. So we'll open the file. With open file name or file path. Make it readable as F. Okay. Now it says, look at each line. Okay, so for line in F. Okay, I'm looking at each line. Split line up and look at the last word. So line dot split. Right, and then how do I, here, we could say it like this. We'll say words equal line dot split. And before we keep going on through all this, let's just print what we've got so far. Because again, I like to take baby steps, and I like to do a lot of sanity checks to make sure that I don't just write a whole bunch of code and then try and run it. And I'm like, well, this doesn't do anything I wanted. Right, so at this point, I expect it to just be able to open up the file, look at each line, split those lines up, based on where the spaces are, and then print out each one of those words. So let's try that. Cool. Looks like it's doing that, right? It's printing the word. So line.split gives you back a list. And if we look here, this list is each of the words, right, inside the line, right? We could just imagine that as each of the lines, right? If we look at line 1, it's Madonna, space, good. And if we look here, it's Madonna, and then we don't have the space because that's what we split on. And then we have good. And then if you imagine each one of these lists, we now just have to look at the last item in each list. Okay, cool. So following my instructions or following the instructions we wrote together is getting us someplace. So let's look at the last word, right? I'm going to be super explicit. The words is that. So last word, what would last word be?
Bracket -1.
Love it. Words, bracket, -1. Right? Okay. And now let's go to my next bit of instructions that we wrote here. We said if the word is good, +1 the good counter. Otherwise, +1 the bad counter. I'll do both of those at the same, right? Let's make sure we're in the right spot. If last word is equal to double equals, right? Because we're comparing now. If it's good, we do one thing. What do? We +1 the good counter. So how do I +1 this counter?
Can we do update?
Absolutely. You know what? I like that. Counter.update. So
No.
we can, I'm trying to think of how I would do it though. I'd need to know what the value is first and then use update with that value. There's a little bit easier way to do it. Update. So by the way, like update's a great method. Update's usually what you're going to use when you want to update multiple values, right? Update multiple values at once. Here we're only going to update one. So there's the other way that we learned how to do it. So how do I first get the value of the good key? How do I first do that?
Put the square brackets good, and then there's the other square bracket.
So that will give me the count at good. And then what do I want to do with it?
Oh. Plus equals 1.
Plus equals 1. Plus equals 1. Right?
And that should be counter.
Beautiful. Thank you. Counter. See, this is why we're doing it together because I can't type. We're C. So let's see. We have otherwise, right? Else plus equals 1 to the bad counter. So we can say counter at bad plus equals 1. Okay, cool. And now, lastly, we want to print the good and bad counter with appropriate formatting. First, let's make sure that this even works. Again, another sanity check. We're just going to print out the counter. And what I expect to see is a dictionary with a key of good and a value of some number. I didn't count them, so we'll see. And a key of bad and some other number. I'm going to assume that it's probably going to be 16 and 15. If it's not, maybe we're off on our counting or something. But let's try. Did I save this? I don't know. We'll save it again. Cool. So now we have a dictionary that has the data that we need, right? We have a way to say, oh, I know how to find out how many good people there are. It's like check that dictionary at the good key. I know how to find out how many bad people there are. Check that dictionary at the bad key. So now let's just print it in the way that it wants. And the easiest way to do that is with using f string. So I'm just going to say f, put in my string. Well, let's see what I want it to say. Looks like I want it to print 2 times. So that's what I'll do. I'll do printing one line of the naughty people, one line with the nice count. So we'll do that. The easiest way, like when you want something to be exact, is to copy and paste. So I'm just going to copy that in there. I'm just going to paste this. And instead of saying 16 people, curly braces, counter at the string good. Oh, bad. It wants bad first. Close that. Cool. All right, so all I did was inside the curly braces, I put the actual variable in here, right? The counter at bad. This will evaluate to whatever bad is and put it into a string for me very nicely. And then we'll do the same thing for the nice list. So we'll print F, put it in a string. I'm just literally going to copy what does it want, and then I'm going to replace the 15 with the variable of what I have. So I just go in here, paste, and instead of it saying 15, curly braces, and inside those curly braces, I want the counter at good. So let's do that. Counter braces, and inside those braces, the string good. And I'm going to save that. Okay, and before I run it, we're just going to look through this one more time and make sure that we followed all the instructions, right? I'm not going to follow this, but we open the file. We look at each line, right? When I say look at each line, that's just a for loop. Split each line up and look at the last word. Well, you know, it's just English here. Split up the line, split up the word, split up the string based on the spaces, right? Obviously, that's like a pretty common thing, right? Split. You can split on all other things too. You can split on like different characters like colons or, you know, hashtags, whatever you want to split on. But by default, it splits on spaces. So it takes that whole line, it splits it up into a list and puts each word in one of the indices. We want to grab the last word because that's what's important to us as we're parsing this file. We grab that last word, and now I'm looking at it, and we say, hey, computer, if that last word says good, increment the good counter. Otherwise, it's probably saying bad, and increment the bad counter. And then lastly, we just want to print it the way it wants. And if you, the easiest way when you're playing with strings and variables in Python to print them out in a way that is that makes sense is to use F strings. And to use them, you just put an F, literally just F in front of it. And any variables that you want to be interpolated into that string, you wrap them in curly braces, just like that. And then let's see if we got it. Oops. What's wrong here? Invalid syntax. Can I not get that? What do I got here wrong?
Double and single quotes. Line 29 and 30.
29 and 30.
I'm
using single all the time.
Yeah.
There we go. So I break my rule all the time. I usually say I use double for everything, but then sometimes I don't. So just so we see what was happening here. When you start one of your quotes, either single or double, right? Originally, these were single quotes. So it was reading it as single quote. Okay, here's a string, here's a string, here's a string. Ah, this must be the termination quote. So it ended the string and then it was unhappy about that. Now that it's single quotes, it's like, okay. Should be good now. Let's see. Yay. Here we go. So now it says naughty list has 16 people. The nice list has 15 people. I think the biggest things to take away are writing out your approach in just plain English first. And as you do that, it makes it quite a bit easier to see how to translate it into code, right? When you're repeating something like saying, look at each line, that should jump out to you like, that means a loop. I'm going to repeat doing something until I'm done with that file, right? When you're saying grab the last of something, you should think, the last of something, that must mean there's a collection. And if it's a collection, that means I can probably like, grab the -1th index, right? Same idea here. If you're keeping counts, generally dictionary should be your default data structure for counting things. In this particular case, right, I could have just said good and bad and just left them as just 2 integers that I incremented. That would have been fine. That's totally cool approach as well. But you could also imagine other situations where you're counting a lot more things. And that's when you might want to use a dictionary. Do we have any like questions on this before we kind of wrap up for lunch? I'm stealing time from your lunch right now.
All right, I'm going to open the breakout rooms, but everybody, all the students stay here. I'm opening the breakout rooms though, but just stay in the main room.
Yes. I think it might, does it force push them though?
I'm taking that off.
Okay, cool. Yes. Cool. So I guess you guys can head off to lunch then. We'll be back at 2:30 where we will switch gears a bit and get into back into CyberLab and talking the OSI model and some more fun stuff like that. All right.